Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Everyman Podcast. Now, tonight we have a very special guest. We have Neil Clark, who is an expert in all things elite athletes and mental health in general. How are you doing tonight, Neil?
Pretty good, thank you. Thank you very much. We had a few internet problems earlier. The family had been banished to the loft room, and the neighbour's cat has been put out. So I think I'm ready.
Yeah, it's always interesting at the start when we do these podcasts because it's one of those where you're absolutely gambling that the guest has workable internet. And as I said before, it's usually mine that goes pretty crap throughout an episode. So yeah, hands up. For once, audience, it was not me. It was Neil. So sorry for being slightly late, guys, with starting the episode. Reese, how are you doing tonight, mate?
Yeah, I'm all right. I've had a bit of tech issues there as well. I couldn't get my headphones connected. I've just got a new mic, so I'm testing this out. So you'll have to let us know if that's not up to scratch. But the headphones, I realised they were connected to my phone still, so I was wondering why they wouldn't connect to my laptop. Makes sense, really, when you think about it. But yeah, I'm good. Been a bit of a rough week.
Okay.
Come off the back of being ill. I've got back into my running again, back following my plan. I was out 4 times, but with the bad weather and stuff, I was in on the treadmill, and I don't think I get the same benefits that I normally do from a treadmill as I do if I was outside. So I know that I need to start getting myself out because I don't really like the cold. I normally go into hibernation over the winter. But this year I'm fully committed to this year I'm fully committed to absolutely smashing the winter, ready for my 4 ultras and marathon next year. How are you, Lewis?
Yeah, probably fairly similar. I felt like I've had a little bit of the old man flu. I think last week was like super busy for me at work. I work for EE. We've gone through a full new brand launch. We're spending crazy amounts of money. We're all over the UK. And the area that I look after, where days I was training twice a day, I was running, I was in the gym. My body just went, nope, you've had enough. And I didn't train for pretty much what felt, I think it was about 6 days. I didn't do anything. I couldn't get out of bed early. I was just mentally and I don't know, I was probably in my own head a little bit. And then I think I messaged you and I went for, I think I did 16K or something just to force myself to do something. And then now I'm back on it and I feel back in the zone a bit. Probably like you though, if I don't exercise, I kind of get in my own head, and it's the way that for me, by doing something really hard, and we spoke about this before, but doing something hard like going for a run, it means the rest of my life, no matter how stressful my day is at work, nothing's harder physically than running till your legs are really sore. So everything else just gets that little bit easier. So yeah, back in that mental place of feeling pretty content, in control of things again. Yeah, in a really good place. But I know we talked about this before, and Neil, you said I didn't fail, but I definitely look at it as definitely a learning opportunity. So yesterday I tried to do my first ever marathon, and Reese messaged me in the morning, like, Lou, are you doing a marathon? Are you really? He was like, have you got water? Have you got salts? Have you got gels? And I was like, nope. I'm just going to try and run as far as I can run. The last time I did a half marathon, I was 18. I'm now 30. I'm 31 next month, so I'm 30. So I was like, I put a post out saying, if I do half a marathon, I'll be happy. If I do a full marathon, I'd be delighted. But then my dad was in the Royal Marines. He's still in the forces, but he transferred to the Navy. He was in the Royal Marines, and they have to do a 30-mile speed march, which I looked at, and I was like, that's about 50K. Mentally, if I can just do that, I obviously got nowhere near it. But in my head, I was like, I could definitely do this. I can definitely do this. And then I think I got to 18K in, and my left calf just went. And yeah, it's still a bit sore today. But salt, honestly, I had like just salt all around my eyes, like in my beard. It was horrible. Yeah, my body just gave up pretty much. But as you say, it was a lesson, and I learned that I need to prepare, and I can't just wing a marathon basically with very little training. But
you should join me, Lewis. I'm showing off now. Not as far as Reece, but I've done one Ironman in my time. I went to a few dark.
Yeah.
That was fun. But going back to your running, it's interesting the difference between a half marathon and a marathon, and that second half is so much more than just cardio. It's all those and any sort of pronation or any way you're running. That's not it's not ideal. It just gets worse and worse and worse. So it's a long way, man. A long way.
Do you know what it was? Right, it was times running. So we live near the coast. And yesterday was quite a nice day. Loads of people were out. And on the paths that I was running, some people just didn't move. So then I had to keep hopping onto the road, onto the path, onto the road, onto the path. And mile or K, once I was in the 20s, like I could really feel that in my legs, just even the little hops onto the path, onto the road and path. So I think you're right. Maybe that's where my calf went a little bit, because I felt it once jumping onto the road. I was like, oh, that was a bit tight. And then it just gradually got worse and worse.
It is a lot easier doing a race.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, it is a lot easier doing a race as well than it is doing it on your own.
Yeah. Yeah, you said that to me after, to be fair. So,
it's much.
Neil, tell us a little bit about the Ironman. I think that's one thing I definitely didn't know. And you also dropped it in today, Lewis. I've done a marathon or marathons. So obviously physical activity is definitely something that you're big on. So be really keen to understand that a bit.
Yes, and it's related to what we're talking about. I mean, we could do a podcast on triathlons, Ironman, endurance sport, but actually that joy of something Reece you said about being out in nature rather than the treadmill. Loads of research about the power of nature, of being outside, people taking their shoes off and grounding, all that good stuff, and that is really, really powerful. So getting out in nature is important, whether it's walking or running. The Ironman comes from years ago. I got into triathlons, joined a swim squad, met my training buddy, Jonesy, so I'll give him a mention now. And we went on a journey together. And again, linking it to what we're talking about, the power of connection, being with someone, building relationships, so important in life, and relationships are different things in life as well. So me and Jonesy, we did a sprint triathlon, then we did an Olympic triathlon, then we did a half Ironman, and then we went for the big one. And I remember we got the triathlon magazine. We thought that Ironman's hard enough as it is without choosing the hilly one. So there was a graph in a magazine that had like this kind of flattest Ironman possible. But and believe it or not, it was in Austria. It wasn't Bolton or something. And so it's scenic, which helped, and it was undulating. And like all these things in life, the gods love to chuck in a curveball. So we got there, and it was a heat wave. So no wetsuits. We went the wrong way on the swim. A boat had to come out, and there was 200 of us going the wrong way in the lake. And so again, another curveball. Got hot on the bike. Then I think it was 40 degrees in the shade on the marathon at 2 PM. So,
oh my God,
a lot of dark places, but I use the word but, this is a positive but. I got chatting to another English guy who was going through the same sort of challenges, shall we say. And we didn't know each other. We got chatting, we bonded, that common goal of running together. We jogged 2.5K, walked through the aid station, banana, flat coat, pretzel, went again 2.5K, and all we did was 2.5K. And without that guy, I would have got through it. Probably would have been slower, but it would have been a lot more painful. So it was a great experience. One I don't think I'll repeat. I think I've done it. I haven't got the tattoo, but I've got the T-shirt, so I've done that.
Quality.
Reece,
you just started doing something new.
I think I might be on a bit of a lag. Sorry.
Maybe me.
So I could drop. Right. So it's something I've always been interested in. It's something that I was possibly planning on doing next year, but I've just started with a running coach, and I may have booked in probably 4 ultras and marathons. So I think my year is kind of booked up next year. So it's something I'm looking at in maybe 2025, 2026, depending on sort of how the running goes, because I kind of want to get a bit competitive next year. I don't know if it's going to be a bit too early next year, so then I might have to put it into 2025, and then the Ironman can. We'll see what happens. But for just the end of the season, there was a 200 meter swim in the sea, followed by a 2K run. I did that one. I won that one, so I was like, "Oh, I like that."
Oh, winning as well for you. I just finished. I'm happy with finishing, but this man wants to win. I like it.
Yeah.
It was only 200 meter swim, then a 2K run.
Never only. It's never only.
So the week after, I signed up for one, which was 500 meter swim, then a 5K run.
Cool.
The swim was brutal. I was the only person there that didn't swim with my head underwater. I was the only one without a swim cap. It was horrendous. I thought I was going to die on my 18th length by drowning. And then it took my transition was probably about 5 minutes as well, trying to get my running trainers on. But then I made up so much time on my run. It was like ridiculous. I think I came 10th or something like that, but it was because my run was second fastest overall compared to. So if I can, the running plan I'm doing at the minute, there's a bit of strength and conditioning. So when I'm doing that, I'm going to the gym and then I'm going for a swim and doing some lengths then, but I'm more practicing on technique rather than just swimming. So if I can get that down and then I can get out on my bike and stuff, I think, but my running is my strong leg. So I think it's the part about Everyman that I find nerve-wracking is that actually the thought of swimming and like bunched up between so many people, and that's the part that's because I've heard you get punched, kicked, all sorts when you're doing it. So
yeah, people talk about that. I'll be honest. There's maybe a bit of shoulder to shoulder, but it's not as bad as it used to be. They do stagger start now. They kind of spread it out. When I did my Ironman, the pros went, then 2,000 of us went off together. So it was like being in a washing machine. Now they kind of go beep beep, and they kind of get people in a more organised way ish. But it depends. If you do a sea swim, then that's a different kettle of fish. I've done a couple of sea swims, and it was not pleasant. So yeah, I'd recommend a lake. Get a nice.
Yeah. There's one just up here, Druridge Bay, called the Geordie Man. I think that's going to be my first one to tackle.
Cool.
There's also a first prize. No, Druridge Bay, the lake there. And there's actually a prize for the first Geordie.
Fantastic.
So that's the one I'll go for that.
Yeah, everyone's probably a Geordie up here, though, to be fair.
Yeah, but there'll be people coming from everywhere for it, with it being an Ironman. It's just not one of the actual official ones.
Yeah. So, Neil, we ask the majority of our guests this question, and it's probably leading us on to, obviously, the purpose of why we have a podcast, all around men's health, making sure men speak, all those sorts of things. Generally, what does men's health mean to you, or health in general, when you think of men's health, mental health, physical health? When you think of that phrase, what does it mean to you?
Wow, what does it mean to me? It's kind of it's a massive, to me. It means it's a massive part of our lives. Full stop. It's something that we need to nurture. It's something that we need to be aware of. It's something we need to educate ourselves about, and just not ignore. And I use an analogy in one of the workshops I run for Mental Health UK about going to the gym. I think it's a nice analogy where if you go down the gym and you're pushing weights and you've got some form, you're looking at your technique, great. And then if someone comes along and says, can you lift a bigger weight? You've been going down a gym, you've been practicing, you've got a bit of form, you've probably in a position where you can maybe tackle that challenge. And I feel mental health similarly. If you don't think about your mental health or look after it, when that challenge comes along, you don't have a toolkit, or you don't think, you think, well, I can't remember what I've read about it, or I haven't listened to these podcasts, or I've not reflected on who I am and on my feelings. So it's much harder to deal with the challenge. So that's what mental health is to me. Something that's very tangible, something you need to think about. And we just spent 10, 15, 20 minutes talking about physical health, and that's super important. And it's linked to mental health. They're not separate things. Improve your physical health, your mental health will get better. Improve your mental health, your physical health will get better. So they are linked. But the challenge here is, we talked about people talk about physical health all the time, and we have our Strava, and we have our how fast we're running, and our watts and our bikes and that. But do we really talk about how we're feeling to our friends, to our co-workers, to our family? A question we ask in the workshops: when I'm doing some teacher training, for example, is do you feel comfortable ringing up saying, I need a day off for my mental health? You know, I need, because I'm feeling overwhelmed, or I'm feeling really anxious, I need time out. And some people can say that because of the environment they work in, but I think it's quite rare. I don't think many can.
Yeah. I feel there's almost that, well, there's a stigma attached to, if I admit there's something wrong with my mental health, then I'm a weak person. Like, people feel that pressure within their own head. And there's definitely been times in my life where I've had mental struggles, and I'd rather say, oh, I feel sick, or I've got the flu, or whatever that might be, versus saying, do you know what, I'm really stressed, or I'm really anxious, or whatever that might be. Because I feel, especially as a man, and as a man, you're inherently, we're brought up to almost try, especially like I've played sport, so I've always tried to be a leader. I've always tried to be fairly vocal, and like, this is me. I'll put myself to the front, and I'm not scared to put myself in situations where it's really challenging, because that's part of my personality. I then, when I first started talking about like my mental health, I really found it as like I was being weak, or I wasn't maybe putting that. I'd been putting a front on for so long that then I was letting a guard down, and I felt really vulnerable from doing that. Since that, later down the line now, I find it quite liberating, actually, to open up and be honest. But there's that real change curve you go on from, oh, I'm putting myself out of my comfort zone, I don't really know what this is, and I could get attacked for this, or whatever that might be, to actually now I gain strength from just being honest, because people are more likely to have a real conversation with you if they feel like you're being a real honest person, versus saying I'm perfect and I'm all right.
You said one word you said there right near the end, strength, and that's we talk. We talk in sport about this as well. That we need to reframe the conversation. We need to see it as a strength. If a sports person says, "I need some help on the mental side, psychologically," that's got to be seen as a strength. And there's some sports are better than others for that. Sports are recognising that it's got to be a case where somebody can ask for help in a very confidential manner, not just go along, because an organisation say, of course you can knock on my door, come in, but for that young athlete to knock on the door, is somebody see me going in to see the sports psychologist, or is somebody else going to be in that room, can be a bit of a barrier. But I think we're moving in the right direction. But it's really key that all of society sees it as a strength. That if Neil says, somebody asked me how am I feeling, and I put it on my LinkedIn post today actually about something that happened last week. You never get a one-word answer from me. Never get in the lift with me and ask Neil, are you okay? Because you'll be there half hour later. I will tell you, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed at the moment. My daughter's just started secondary school, and the homework. I'll share. And then to your point as well, Lewis, about when we're honest with people and we tell them how we feel, it gives them permission, or creates a safe environment for them to say, I'm struggling a bit, I'm feeling a bit anxious, and we start normalizing these words that we had a bit of a taboo many years ago.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. My relationships with people who I genuinely care about have really strengthened from this process of just opening up, because I've got to learn. I do this with a group of my friends, and I now know my friends on a different level than early 20s. You know your friends mainly because you go on nights out and you might play a bit of sport together. That's it. Like, now I'm 30 and I know my friends. I know their fears. I know the things they've struggled with most. They know mine. It just gets on a completely different level of understanding each other. So when I am down or they are down, we can recognize it and actually be friends with each other, and not just lads who might talk in a pub. And I think that's the real difference.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So there was another question that I had. So you're talking around like your views on sort of men's health. How do you look after your health? What do you do specifically? Do you have a routine? How do you keep yourself in check? Right. What's your process?
I'm actually lucky, I think, on two aspects, because we always go back to sort of nature versus nurture. And if you look at psychology and attachment theory, and I've spoken to some people far cleverer than me about this. And what you gain from which parent, how you're born. So I think I was born on reflection with my glass half full rather than half empty. So there's a bit of luck there, but also I'm lucky now in the way in what I do is that I can take my work and reflect it back on myself. So and I do this a lot, when I talk in schools and academies, and I talk about a support network, a social network, the importance of that, and knowing who you will go to if you've got a low mood, or if you want distraction, or it's about sport, or it's about education, having that network. So I reflect all back on myself, and I'm very conscious of that. And I have friends that I use in different ways, depending, what sort of mood I'm in or where I am. So a lot of it is reflecting on my work. I'm very much a people person. I thrive being around people, and that's something. I have a coach myself, and something my coach and I have discussed, going from my old career, which was working in a team, big team in the city, to now working on my own. That's one of the things I miss. So meeting you guys tonight, bonding, making a connection. This is good for me. It's good for my well-being. So I suppose the point there is there's not a one size fits all. So what brings you joy? And straight away I think of the weekend. We went around with some friends, and the lady's birthday was lovely lady. Her husband bought her this bar of chocolate for her birthday, and she described it. She said, I won't mention their names in case they watch later and they're embarrassed. She said, he bought me this bar of chocolate. It brings me joy. And I was like, wow, I love the way he's just describing a simple act of somebody buying something you really like. It wasn't, it's bought me this chocolate and I like it. It brings me joy. And I said, that's really powerful. And I think it's important for all of us to sit down and take a moment, put everything aside. And we can talk about this later, about the power of spending 10, 20 minutes just on quiet reflection every day, which is what I try and do. I'm thinking, what brings me joy? What makes me feel secure? What makes me feel safe? And then recognizing that. And then said, okay, now I know that. So I know Neil Clark likes to be around people. I try and go to my local university once a week for my PhD. I know Neil likes being around people. I sit in my local coffee shop once a week and work all day and have conversations with people. So that's, I think, is really important. Just what brings you joy? What makes you feel safe? What makes you feel secure?
No, I think that's all super insightful as well, and it's so simple. It's like when I first got into this and this idea of maybe looking after my mental health and recognizing that probably what you alluded to at the start, or described at the start, that you have to consciously be aware of your mental health. It is a tangible thing. It's not something that you're going to have, like, you have to accept you're going to have bad days, and that's also okay. But then it's how you cope and get around it. So when I was doing like research into this, and for me, there was so many theories, there was so many strategies, and some of it is fairly complex because people are trying to sell their version of that course, or that retreat for you go away for a month and you do whatever. Like, they're trying to sell a version of joy, or happiness, of positive mental health, where actually it's just doing really simple things that make you happy. That one of the big things for me is just practicing a bit of gratitude and trying to be grateful, like recognizing the things that are good in my life. My life is not perfect by any stretch, but actually I have loads of things in my life that if you'd asked me a year ago what I have today, I would have bitten my left arm off or whatever for it. Like, it's literally my life in so many ways is so much happier, and not because materially much has actually changed, but just because I recognize the things that I'm lucky to have in my life. And I think that's a big mindset shift that has really changed the way I look at life.
Wow.
Reese, probably same question to you, Reese, in terms of how do you look after your mental health? What do you do?
It's a good question. Well, running, it's definitely up there. I've got three kids under 6. I've got a 3-month-old, 2-month-old, 3-month-old, 2-year-old, and a 5-year-old. So house can be quite chaotic at the best of times. I love spending time with them all, my partner. It's great, but I need that break from there as well. I get that at work. My new job that I started a few months ago, I absolutely love it. I haven't been in the job where I've been this happy doing something. It makes a massive difference when I don't, every Sunday night, I don't have that dread that I'm back to work. I don't mind waking up on a Monday. Actually, sometimes it's a nice little break from the weekend and having a full-on weekend with the kids and stuff. It's sometimes nice to get that little break and go back into work. But running is definitely my escape. It just, I don't know. When I was saying earlier about getting out in nature and things as well, I stopped wearing headphones doing most of my running, just so I could actually feel things. Like here, there was I know Lewis touched on a bit of my story earlier, and after I tried to commit suicide, and I was in a mess for a while after. Couldn't really do anything, and I'd signed up for Manchester Marathon. That didn't go well. Well, I missed my time by 2 minutes, but like I hadn't trained, so I'd done 4 hours and 2 minutes, and I seen that as a massive fail. I think I'd done 2 6-mile runs in about 9 months. Probably hadn't really ran properly since I did the wall in the June before, and this was April. And I honestly, I couldn't have seen it as a bigger fail, and that messed with my head so bad. But then a few weeks later, I turned 30, and I'd done David Goggins 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. The third run, 12 o'clock at night, I slept through it. Woke up 20 to 4 on the settee, like, oh my God, I failed this as well. And I lay there for about half an hour, just like, what am I going to do? And I got up and I'd done 8 miles, but I forgot my headphones, and I just, 4 o'clock in the morning, the sun was just coming up, and it was crazy. I felt so at peace after all this time I'd spent in a battle, like with myself, to then feel completely at peace, just hearing some cars. There was hardly any cars on the road at that time, and so, like I say, the sun was coming up, the birds are and that freedom of not having headphones and blocking everything out and just focusing on putting one foot in front of the other, feeling everything that was going on around us instead of. So for the rest of the runs that I'd done, I didn't wear headphones. I was either with people, or even the 12 o'clock at night one where I'd done on my own. The next night, it was just, honestly, it's crazy. But the running, and like I say, without the headphones, I was debating whether I go to the gym in the morning or run to work. I'm running to work tomorrow now. I've speaking on this has convinced us to do that. Even though I don't like the cold and it's forecast rain. But yeah, it's, I guess that's what keeps me good. Family. And I don't really do much social things now as well. Like with us stopping drinking, I can go out and I can have non-alcoholic lager. I enjoy it, and it doesn't bother us if people are drinking. It's just not what it's not something I want to spend my time doing now. Sitting in a pub, I don't know. It's lost all its interest. All I used to wanted to do was go out and get as drunk as I could. And I don't understand why. And well, I do now. Looking back at everything, it's just because how unhappy I was. And when you were saying about that big challenge when it comes up, and if you don't take care of your mental health, all I did was drink on my mental health. If I was having a bad day, I would drink, and I drank. And then when I did decide to stop, that's when the real challenge began, because I didn't have any way of coping with the way I was feeling. And then that's how it ended up taking us to where it was. It took us about 4 months from deciding I wanted to stop drinking, having my last drink. And that was when I was stood on the lines, and I haven't had a drink since that day. And I'm going to be 8 months on Friday sober.
Well done. Awesome. Yeah, well done.
Yeah, really proud of you, mate, as well. Yeah, it's been some journey. So Neil, throughout that point that you made before, and I think you've touched a bit on working with elite athletes. I think now would be a good time to understand and tell the audience a bit around like what you do, the work that you do, your experience, because I think that's one super interesting angle. We've had Tim Harkness on from Chelsea Football Club, who has probably a fairly similar background to yourself. He's head of sports science and psychology at Chelsea Football Club. Right. And it's fairly similar background to yourself in terms of elite sport, elite psychology, mental health. That episode went really well, and loads of people had loads of questions. And we do have some questions that we can touch on for yourself, because we put some polls out ahead of you coming on. But yeah, I think it'd be really interesting to understand some of the work that you do, and equally how important sort of mental health is in the work that you do as well.
Okay, so I wear many hats, so we'll talk about the sports one first. And one of the companies that I work for, I think is it okay to say company's name on this? There's no
of course. You can say anything. You can.
I'm not going to put a can of Coca-Cola here and product placement. So I work very fortunate enough to be a training associate for Mental Health UK and for Switch to Play Foundation, and for both organisations, I go into sport academies. Now, let me just take a step back. A few years back, we were looking at the transition of an athlete, that major transition from their athletic career to the new world, and the loss of identity. And I think we all know that if you've got an athlete who is an athlete 24/7 for a number of years, I know rowers who only got one day off in 3 months, for example, never been to a friend's wedding, and then suddenly you're that rower with a bag full of medals on a Friday afternoon, and on a Monday morning you're not. So you're not being told what to do, where to go, what to eat, when to go to sleep. That is really challenging to deal with. So I do a lot of work with athletes, helping them move from their athletic career to a new identity, a new world. Some don't mind if we talk about it as retirement. Some actually, I try not to. I like to talk about it as evolution, evolving. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I'm saying it. If you look at the concept in Japan of ikigai, and they talk about people getting older, I don't think there's a word for retirement in Japanese. That's what I read once. Older people just evolve into other work, which I love that. So you don't just have that stop, boom. So I imagine this, I'm talking about these athletes. I'd imagine if you retire, so you've been working 40 years, especially for one place or maybe two, and suddenly you retire, you might think, oh, great, I've got all the time in the world. But what do you do on week 2 or week 3 or week 4? I mean, so
yeah, exactly.
So that's a big challenge for athletes. But we recognise very early on that if we start talking about an athlete's transition on the day they retire or stop or want to evolve, it's not late. It's not too late, but it's not ideal. So we go right back, and we want to talk to athletes while they're in their athletic career. We want to talk to people in sports academies, because in some academies they might not actually go on and become professional athletes, professional football, for example. So I do work running workshops in academies. We do a lot of work around well-being, transferable skills, some of that sort of stuff. Think about the person than just the athlete. So trying to get these young people to think about their identity and reflect on that. Being a sports person is part of who they are, not all of who they are. And I know that if you said to a 15-year-old Neil who was at a sports academy, if an older Neil Clark came in with all this mental health stuff, I might start to switch off. I get that. But if I can just sow a few seeds, if I can just say, look, here, and what I always say as well is that what I put up on my 200-page PowerPoint presentation, well, it's not 200, but what I put up there is a little bit from me, but it's mainly from the athletes I work with. And I'm really fortunate that I have 17 ex-elite athletes who help me with my research. So I'm doing a PhD as well. So anything I put up there says about how do you manage the selection process? How do you manage injuries? It's not just from Neil Clark. It's from an ex-All Black. It's from an ex-triathlete. It's from an ex-footballer. So, I'm very sort of strict on that, to say to people that this is coming from people like you who've been on that journey, and I've asked them to look back. Yeah. What worked well when you were injured, and what didn't work, and what would you change? So that's a lot of what I do. So I work with athletes across the spectrum, academies to retired, even some athletes who retired maybe a few years ago, and something's happened in their life. Maybe there's been a trigger, and they've reached out to one of the organisations I work with, asking for help, and we do some mentoring with them. So they're the two main things.
I have to be honest, that is so interesting, because and I'm glad Ethan's not on, because he would have just ripped me for bringing this up. At one point, Yeah, at one point in my life, I've been one of those athletes. When I was young, I was like at football academies and stuff growing up. And like for years, my whole mindset was like, I'm going to be a footballer. That is it. I'm going to be a footballer. I don't care what anyone else says. That's all my life is going to be. I'm going to be a footballer, going to be a footballer, going to be a footballer. And it didn't happen, obviously. I say obviously because I'm hosting a podcast and I'm not a professional footballer. And that happened, probably around 18, where I probably gave up on that dream after wasn't at a club. I was like, right, it's not going to happen. And whilst I felt like I'm a fairly good communicator, I'm pretty confident, I would put myself in difficult situations, I didn't have a clue what I could do and what I wanted to do, because my whole life had been focused on, actually, I'm just only going to do this one thing. And I think, especially for young lads, I can only speak being a young lad at sort of 14, 15, 16, 17, when you start getting offered your contracts, because you put everything into it, because that's the only chance, you have to put everything in, otherwise you're never going to be successful, that there needs to be those conversations around, well, I think the stat is something crazy, like 90 odd % never make it. And then out of that 90 odd %, a huge proportion of them never go back to playing football again. Like I didn't play football for like 4 years or something after, because I'd fell out of love with it. And I'd probably become a little bit disillusioned. So yeah, there's definitely so much more around that. And how receptive are clubs and sort of academies and things to getting you in and talking about that sort of stuff?
It's getting better. It's getting better. So we've come a long way in 10 years. And I'm going to drop in a few names now. There's people out there like Craig at Wimbledon, I know really well, who is passionate about, creating a legacy and an academy where you've got the footballer and they're going to do their best to make them as successful as possible, but also build a person. You've got Lee at Wigan. I was at West Ham the other night with Evan, who's fantastic, really passionate about their young players. So it's getting better. There's still lots to do. It's a balancing act. Now, you mentioned there, I think you said something about to be successful, you've got to be 100% dedicated. Actually, because I'm also an academic doing a PhD, what a number of us academics want to prove or show, and it's quite difficult, is that if you take time out from being a person, you develop other facets of your personality, you can be just as successful, if not more successful. So there was some research over in Australia. I can't remember exactly the study. It looked at lots of Australian footballers, rules football, and they followed them for their career. And it seemed to show that those who had interests outside of sport, those who took time out, had longer careers and were more successful. And that's really powerful. And I think to kind of back that up, if you think on a football pitch, on a netball court, or swimming or whatever, there's only so much you can teach as a coach. And something could happen that's unpredictable. Now, if somebody's got all these other cognitive skills that they've built because of these other interests, they might be able to react in a more positive way and deal with that challenge that they've not practiced on the practice field, if you get my point. So,
yeah, I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, so it's down to academics for us to do the studies to try and prove that. Then we can influence the academies to give these young players time out.
Yeah, I also think, as you were speaking there, I probably quickly reflected on something. So as a young sports person, I used to get in my head really badly. Like I would overthink. I would maybe before a game get a little bit more nervous than as you get older and you take the pressure off because it doesn't mean as much mentally or whatever. Where I think if you then have other interests then as a young sports person, maybe you're not putting all that, wow, I have to really perform here and because you're tense, aren't you? Your performance isn't the same. And like when you're in the flow, you're relaxed, you're calm, you think more clearly. So yeah, I definitely think there's legs in what you're saying. Because as a 30-year-old who definitely doesn't play at a very good level anymore, I mentally feel so much more clarity playing versus when I was 18, because I was putting myself under so much pressure. And the best players that you ever see, they're so calm, relaxed. They seem just to take everything in their stride. And that's not just football. I suppose that's all athletes. It's how you can control your mind and think about what you're doing versus worrying about what you've got to do.
Yes, definitely. And something you said there as well about if you're 100% focused on your sport, maybe you're worrying about it, overthinking it, do something else, you feel calmer. And that's kind of like a distraction method, isn't it? And we talk about in well-being, if something happens to you that's challenging, somebody says something that's unkind, I say this to a lot of young people in schools, one technique is to distract yourself, to distance yourself from that. So your point there, that when you're doing something else, you're not thinking about your sport and about, maybe you're not thinking about the performance you just had or the big game coming up, you're focusing on something else, which then reduces the anxiety and puts, it calms you down. So that's a good point.
Because it's also tiring. It's also tiring, though, isn't it? Like if you've got a big game or something big coming up, even a presentation at work, for example, and you don't sleep very well because you're overthinking. If you can remove that, because sleep's so important, isn't it? If you have a good night's sleep, you feel 100 times better in the morning than versus having a broken sleep. So, yeah, I think that's all super interesting.
Sleep, I say in nearly every workshop, in sport they talk about controllables. Sleep, diet, and exercise, and I say to the young people I work with, whether it's young athletes, young people in schools, because I go into secondary schools, I'm not asking you never to eat a pizza. I'm not asking you to have 12 hours sleep and a power nap that's in your core for you, or whatever, and then do an Ironman. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying, if you can make little changes, it's like 80-20 rule. So rather than having those if you're having 4 takeouts a week, cut it down to 3. Still have your dinner and your pizza, that's fine, but just little tweaks. If you're sleeping 6 hours a night, can you go to 6 hours and 15? So, and I'm reading studies now where doctors, really forward-thinking doctors, are prescribing sleep, are prescribing diet, are prescribing exercise to people suffering from depression, anxiety. And that's not to say there's not a place for medication. But what I'm saying is, if you read some of the stuff from Johan Hari and that about depression and being connected and so on, we probably don't sleep as human beings. I don't think we sleep properly nowadays. We don't breathe properly. We don't eat properly. But we can go back to getting on top of those things we can control. It doesn't cost any money, hopefully, about sleep and eating, and it's something you could change tonight if you think about it. So really important: the sleep, the diet, and the exercise.
Yeah. Do you know, there was one thing you said before around so the work that you do and almost that transition from elite athlete or athlete into, I would describe it as like civvy street, and that's mainly because my dad being in the military, and I've done work with the military around that transition from being in the military to civvy street. Have you done any work at all with the military at all? Because it seems like a very similar principle of transition from that. You're almost indoctrinated into your environment as an athlete, same as in the military. You are your own environment then, aren't you? Your habits, everything are, like you say, you're cooked for, you're told where to be at what time, you're wearing a uniform every day. There's all that sort of pressure in what you do. Have you done anything to reflect that with the military at all?
I've not done any work with the military. I know some people have done, and you're spot on. It's very, very similar. The parallels are easy to see. And I can only assume a lot of people, when they leave the military, are sort of wander around a bit lost in that. I know I have friends who have started up apps and communities to try and get those people back together. So I think the military are quite good at, I hope they're quite good at having maybe alumni and veterans getting together, because that's really important. But no, the parallels there, maybe prisons as well, coming out of prison, if you've been in prison for 10 years. You've had a prison identity, and you come out and like, well, who am I? What do I do now? So lots of parallels there.
Yeah, I suppose it's then reflecting on maybe the principles in your work. So if maybe we could delve into some of that then, because I'm thinking, whilst I would love our audience to all be elite athletes, they're probably not. Some of them are probably more likely to be maybe some people who've been in prison, or people who've been in the military, or people who've been in one career throughout their life and then looking to maybe transition to do something else, because life gives us these challenges every now and then, especially with the pandemic happening. We all had those moments like, do I want to keep doing the same things? It's almost been like a master reset for lots of people, isn't it? To almost take control of their life. So if we look at some of the work you do and the principles of helping someone transition from one identity to another, what is some of that work that you do with them in terms of, is it real reflection on their own skill set, their mindset, their goals, their beliefs? Like, what does that look like?
Great question. And one thing to add to all that list of people that had these challenges, you said about work. You mentioned about choosing a new career. Some people actually don't have that choice. They get made redundant or lose their job.
Yeah,
and so that's
exactly.
and I was made redundant many years ago, and suddenly it's like being injured as an athlete because it wasn't planned. Boom, you're out, and you walk out the door. You can't say goodbye to anyone. You sit on the train coming home, giving it, okay, what's going on now? So So another example. Back to your question about helping people on that transition. It's really, I've really had to work at my active listening. You probably can tell that there's a lot going on here, and I have ideas, and I like talking. So I've had to really slow down, just really listen and kind of read between the lines and sort of probe and find out, what sort of makes that person tick. And I'm thinking of one example of that I work with, and we were talking about why they went into this sports career and the sort of person it made them and what they gained from it, and what they might want to sort of take from that. And as we were having this conversation together, because the athlete hadn't fully left that career, but was thinking about it, but it was a bit of fear, we kind of scratched below the surface and worked out that the person had gained a lot from their athletic career, and there was a worry that they would go back to who they were before they were that sports person and lose everything that they gained. So we did a lot of work on, okay, what's really important to you? What have you learned? What are the sort of things that you want to take from your sports career and have in your new world? And how can we develop that? And it could be something as simple as still being a competitive sports person, but in something else with less stress, maybe. It could be another new challenge, a long-term goal. So athletes usually have long-term goals, 1 year, 4 years, 8 years, whatever, maybe it's Olympic cycle or football league, etc. And people tend to thrive on that. The research kind of shows that it's good for your well-being to have goals in life, to have aspirations. That's actually good, something to strive for, something to help you get up in the morning to get going, to achieve. And so that's something. So if you're moving away from this identity where you had all these goals, like daily, weekly, monthly goals, what can we put in place now? What can we work towards that would satisfy that requirement? So it's goals, but in a different setting. So that's something we look at as well.
It's interesting you say about goals and aspirations there. Sorry. With me, if I don't have a race signed up for, I won't run. That's why I kind of went absolute gung-ho next year and signed up for Edinburgh Marathon, then the Wall, and then 3 ultras at the back end of the year, because then it keeps us for the full year busy. And I'm weird. I'll openly admit that. Even though I know it's good for us, I will just sort of, if there's nothing there, there's no end goal, and it's just, there's no point in going out and what am I training for, what am I doing it for? And I'd stopped setting goals when I was struggling quite a lot last year. I did. I didn't have any goals. I didn't have anything to aim for. I'd finished the Wall, and then it was, there's no point in running now. I've completed that, it's daft really, because I know how good it is for me. I know what it does to us, but if there's no goal, no aspiration, if there's nothing to build up for, then I just switch off and don't do it. And that's why I just need to keep setting new targets, new goals. And that's what I've got to keep, especially on the path I'm on now. It would be very easy to, I know how easy relapsing is and stuff. I listen to a lot of podcasts on that sort of stuff, just to try and keep me aware of what I need to be aware of. So, and that this is the most important. Keep me outside, keep me running, and then that's what I'll keep. That's what it all goes back to. If I end up picking up a drink again, I lose my family, I lose my kids, I lose everything. It's simple, and I don't want that. So I've got to keep myself happy with them goals, like you say.
Yeah. Well, links, Lewis, to what you were saying earlier about, you asked me if I had tips about looking after your well-being, and that's one we didn't mention that far. And I've talked about something in my work, and then Reece has backed it up with, for people listening to this, what goals do you have in life? And we're not talking about doing Ironman. We're not talking about being a professional athlete. It can be simple, something like couch to 5K, which is a wonderful concept. It could be simple as just walking a bit further, or it could be simple as seeing some close friends twice a month. But just having or it could be some education. It could be learning an instrument. It could be drawing. It could be. It's not a one size fits all. But if you try lots of things and find out what brings you joy, then give yourself a goal about what brings you joy. You see how it all links together, and then you're starting to build up this tool that's going to protect your well-being. Yeah. Even when it's going down, you can think, okay, back into my toolkit. Right, go for a walk, go for a run, do some painting.
Yeah, I think that's so important. It's like that thing in life. Well, for me, the years that I haven't had a holiday booked, work seems to drag, and it's like, work's getting on top of me. But if you just have a holiday booked, you almost have that like countdown, don't you? Because it's like, I'm going on holiday, and you see people put a status on in 432 days, 6 hours, 12 minutes, and 11 seconds. I am going on holiday. But it's that having that destination to get to, because without it, life is like being on a hamster wheel, isn't it? We're just going through the motions every day. And as humans, I feel we always need to either be building up to something, or we need those real moments of like, because having something booked in the future is building up to achieve something. And if it's a holiday, you're achieving getting to that point in my life where I don't have to be at work, where I can take time with my friends, family, whatever, and relax, switch off, enjoy myself. Like, it's getting to those moments. And the things that I've tried to do that have helped me is put enough of those things in place 3 months ahead, 6 months ahead, a week ahead, depending on where my moods are at, is putting things in advance. And I'm not amazing at it, because I am a typical bloke, and I will slag off all of us blokes here. I am not the most organized person naturally, like at all. So I have to consciously think about it. I have reminders in my notepads. I have reminders in my work calendar. Like, Lewis, even it could just be half an hour. Take some time, go for a walk, or you need to plan something now for a month in the future. Just so I've always got those little moments of happiness, joy, as you say, and then get to receive the gratitude from, okay, I'm grateful for my past self for setting me up for something good to look forward to, or that I'm now doing this that I probably wouldn't have planned if I wasn't proactively thinking about it. But yeah, I think that there was definitely some really interesting points there. Reece, because you've recently gone through a bit of a career change, right? You were a chef for many years. Now you're working for a charity. How did you find that transition from sort of, because again, you achieved quite a lot. I think you were Northeast Young Chef of the Year. Like, your career was going in one direction as a chef, something you're really passionate about, to then now what you're doing. How did you find that from, I imagine as a chef, you had some, like, obviously you had recognition, you probably felt pride, sense of achievement. There was a level of skill set there, to then doing something that probably isn't as natural. How did you find that?
It was hard. I love being a chef. It was absolutely brilliant. It was a horrible industry. It's terrible, really, actually, when you look back and think I was working 120 hours a week on minimum wage on a 0-hour contract. It sounds horrible when you say it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I was coming out with quite a lot of money, because I was
doing 4 million hours a week. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. It was the most unhealthy lifestyle in the world. I'd be working 5-6 days a week, starting 6-7 in the morning, working through till 11-12 o'clock, serving the last meals. You would get pints brought up, you would finish them, you would go downstairs, have more pints, then you would go off to somewhere else, and you would sometimes be out till 4 or 5 in the morning, taxi home, hour sleep, taxi back to work, do it all again. And the recognition, the recognition was, you've done well, here's the pints. So you can kind of see where my problem for alcohol came from. But the actual job itself, it was great. You become like a family in the kitchen. You spend that much time with them. That bond you get with the different people. I don't really speak to many people now, but I do have some close friends still from that industry, and it is a special type of bond you can build in the workplace. And then just before, well, I'd moved to Bermuda after I won the competition, and that's where I met my girlfriend, who I'm with now. We came back from Bermuda, and it was just before she fell pregnant. She's like from an hour and a half away, so it was tough for her. She didn't know anyone up here. She was finishing work. She was going back and when we'd moved back to my mom's house at the time when we first moved back, and it was just not a very nice lifestyle for her. So I said, right, I'll stop being a chef. And I ended up working in a contact center. So you can imagine going from being in a chef where it's that mad atmosphere to in a contact center where it's sitting down all day. I was used to being on my feet. The first day I went in, it was just training, and I started at 9 and I was finished by 2 o'clock. I was back in my mom's kitchen by 3 o'clock, I think. And I stood for probably about an hour, just pacing back and forwards in the kitchen. What am I supposed to do now? I'd never had this time to myself in 6-7 years. I'd been a chef. And the adjustment was quite tough. It's a complete different career. I ended up moving after about 6 months into the payroll department, and then that became a bit more of a challenge and stuff. And well, that was another change completely from being in the contact center, and that's how I fell into doing payroll. So that's where I am now. But it was, I guess trying to break it down. I don't think I really thought much on it because I was drinking at that time, and if I felt anything, I would just have a drink on it. So I'm only at a certain point of breaking down different parts of my life from the different challenges, and that's probably not one that I've looked at yet. But yeah, it was tough. That's it. That's pretty much it. Yeah, I think it is tough. It's a hard change, and especially like I say, I think I'm waiting to find out if I've got the ADHD as well. So being a chef would have been really good for that, the constant movement and stuff.
Yeah. I know we've touched on that on the podcast before, and there's a few of us going through that process at the moment. So I'm pretty sure from the conversations we've had, if one of us doesn't have ADHD, we probably all don't, because whatever we've got, I think we will have a version of something fairly similar. But yeah. Neil, you mentioned as well, so you've worked in the city before to then what you're doing now. How was that transition for you? And especially knowing what you know. So I'm asking probably here as much to reflect on the challenges you had and how you're probably maybe still adapting to them, and what that was like for you going from, I imagine in the city was probably fairly corporate, I imagine, to then again working by yourself now is very different to that type of environment, isn't it?
Yeah, I was working for investment banks in the city, doing IT, getting paid good money to turn things on and off. And then got promoted, so I was then telling other people how to turn things on and off. Yeah, that was a sort of level of it.
I love the IT crowd jokes. Love it.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I enjoyed it. That's not good. Don't get me wrong. My first degree was computer science. I did enjoy it. My wife always thought I was a bit of a different IT manager because I'm not saying IT managers don't like people, but careful what I say here, because I might be watching this. Generally, in some industries, people become managers because they've been there the longest or they're the most technical. Okay.
Yeah.
And I passionately believe nobody should be a manager or leader or responsible for people in any walk of life unless you have consistent training. I mean, not just a one-off workshop. You should have a mentor and a coach and monthly training. It is a huge responsibility because the decisions, the way you behave, the decisions you make can have a massive impact on people and how they feel. So I enjoyed managing people, and sometimes my teams would get bigger because Neil likes managing people, have a few more people. Maybe it fed the ego, but I went out there and got myself trained up. I had a great manager as well, John Brooks, from years ago. So I was lucky that I had a great mentor manager, someone I could, look to and mimic their behavior. Yeah. So, but what happened after about a number of years, something was missing. I felt as though I was a small cog in a big machine. I wasn't fulfilled. And I started to look at what do I really want to do? And that's when I went back to uni, did a master's in sports business and leadership. So combining my kind of leadership experience and my passion for sport. Absolutely loved it. Got into sports psychology. Met a great professor who got me into the world of well-being. And it's I've been very supportive on the way from my family and previous work colleagues, and it's been a fascinating journey. And reflecting on it, it's I love learning. So if I think about my values are curiosity. I'm curious about the world. So because I had these values that maybe I didn't realise, that helped. I remember sitting in my first lecture at Loughborough University, London, and we were doing a lecture on leaders. Alex Ferguson. I'm a Manchester United fan, so maybe we're going to get lots of angry people now putting things in the chat. I had to go home and write about it, and I'm walking home thinking, I love this. My homework is to write about my football team. It was brilliant. I always remember that.
Yeah.
So lots of good moments, lots of positive moments, and then reaching out to people like Switch to Play and Mental Health UK and learn about their world and being given the opportunity to deliver, to write content for them, and then eventually to meet great people like yourself as well. So I'm still on the journey. I don't think the journey will never end. I believe in learning for life. I love when I meet new people and have new experience like tonight.
Yeah. And we're grateful, very grateful for you coming on as well. Like it's hugely insightful to listen and learn from your experiences, definitely. One thing that you said earlier as well, so you mentioned that you feel naturally you're a glass half full person. Which I actually think I am, to be fair, and I think that's served me pretty well in life. But have there been moments in your life where it's been challenging? I'm going to presume yes, because we've all had them, where you've had to, and how have you got through them? So if there has, presume there has, and how have you got through them? Like what have you relied upon to get you through maybe some challenging times?
Well, okay, take a deep breath. So I had a very bad experience a year ago in a triathlon, where my best friend had a sudden cardiac arrest and actually didn't survive the swim. Let's put it out there. So yeah, he was doing triathlons with me the last few years. My best mate from the last 20, 30 years. Nickname's Mouse. We would call him Mouse, little small guy. And yeah, it happens in triathlons. It's horrible. And so I was on the swim. He's 200 meters behind me. I don't know what's going on. I did the bike ride, then went on the run, and then they pulled me off the run. And I thought they pulled me off the run because I don't know, I'd done something wrong, I'd knocked someone over, whatever. And then they told me what happened, and that was horrendous. And even now I can kind of feel my voice probably has changed a little bit. So I had to, deal with that, bring his stuff home to his wife, his family. It was as bad as it, in my mind, for me, in my context, as bad as it gets. Luckily, I had my mate Jonesy with me who didn't know Mouse, so he could help me get home. So that was difficult. And to your point about coping with that, it was friends, really. It was connections again. It was having a close friendship group. We always had that. But we became closer. And I suppose that's group psychology. When something happens, the group kind of comes in and supports each other. And from what we've done, we've been very deliberate about this. And we've said, we were talking earlier about life. If you don't set goals up, life can just happen. We said, look, we've got to put things in the diary to see each other. We've got to make the effort. So we started, we've been doing some half marathons together the last couple of years. My mate, his other best friend, flies over from Spain, and we do a half marathon together. We do there's a boat park, which is lots of old mods and soul boys on the Thames. We do that every 3 months, a couple of us. So we've been very deliberate about looking after each other, about speaking about our feelings, about making sure we're okay, and then having a goal as well. And the goal is my friend's legacy. We're going to build his field of dreams. He worked at a school. He was really loved at a school. So we're going to build, and there's deliberate language here. It's not we are trying to build or we are aiming to do this. We promise family. We're going to build an all-weather sports pitch at the school that he worked at in Bracknell, Wide Riding School. It's going to be, Andy Hayes' Field of Dreams. So having that goal and we've raised £25,000 already. My best friend Lloyd, who knew really well, ran the London Marathon this year in a beer can, went for a world record, raising money for now. So we're doing
Wow.
it with a bit of fun, with a smile on our face. There are tears. I have cried at times when we've been, I don't know, at a gig and a song's come on, or Mouse would have been there. There's been hugs, there's been cries. We're not afraid to show our emotions. So I think it's being honest with each other and having that goal and something to aim for, that we're going to create something permanent in his memory.
Firstly, I'm so sorry to hear that. That story. As soon as you said it, I was like, oh, like that's some real serious stuff. So yeah, really sorry to hear that, and obviously send all of our thoughts to his family, because again, that is just a terrifying story more than anything, that you could be out doing something and it can just happen. Like, one minute you're here, the next minute you're not. And I think we've all, us as a group of men doing this podcast, have probably been closer to moments like some of my stories fairly similar to Reese's, in the sense that I got to the point of not wanting to be here anymore. And I'm just so grateful that I have had this moment in my life to be able to say, like, okay, something wasn't right in my life. I now have to do things to make sure that it's okay. Same with Reese and like us as a group of mates. So what you're saying around making sure you prioritize time with your friends, because it may not be as morbid as I'm making it sound, because they might not be here tomorrow, but it's actually just about making sure that you're there for each other and that you enjoy life the best you can. So like you say, finding those moments of joy, that's so important. And I think as a group of us as a group of mates, we're trying to maybe get a bit better at that. Reese, I don't know what your thoughts are on that one.
Yeah, no, like Lou said, I'm really sorry to hear that, and it's tragic. You go to do something that's there to, it's a goal. It's something you do to freedom, enjoyment, and that happens. I'm sorry. That's what. Yeah, it's just horrific. But like you said, that friendship, that's so important. I think it's actually made us realize that maybe the full step back that I'm doing by not really doing any socializing isn't completely right, because I'm kind of, although I'm trying to do things that I think are right for me, maybe I need to also get out a bit more to be there for other people as well, because people have been there for me. It's a tough one, because it is
it's hard trying to balance everything, isn't it?
Yeah, and then 3 young kids. I do this every week. I've got a training plan, and time, like,
you got a missus.
Time is of the essence. I've got a missus, and she's sometimes not my biggest fan when I book too many things in to say. No, time does get tough, and like, it's important these years, especially for the 3. And my son plays football 3, 4, 5 times a week, and that's just one of them. Luckily the other 2 are at a young age and they're not doing anything, because then I really don't know if I would ever have a single second to myself to even do a 5K run.
Well, you run it in about 18 minutes or something, so I think you'll have time.
19 and a half is my PB. But no, that whole friendship thing, I think that's something I do need to look at, because it's probably been a while since I've caught up with some people. But touching on that as well, someone reached out to me last week. He met, actually, it was a couple of weeks ago, he messaged and he just said, do you ever do meetups with a podcast? And I said, oh, not at the minute. And I kind of left it at that. And then I reached back out to him and asked how he's doing. And he said he hadn't been doing too great. So I met up with him one night last week, and he was able to get stuff off his chest, and he spoke with his family, spoke with his friends, and told them the situation. And no, it's doing a good thing, this podcast, for someone to be able to reach out to us and talk for the first time about stuff that has happened over quite a long period of time. And it is a reward for sort of, because that's the struggles I've been through. All I want to do with that is to not let other people go through that, because I didn't know there was any other way out. I didn't. It didn't feel like any way out. I was asking for help, and there was nothing coming back. I was getting to it like 9 months, 12 months, blah blah blah, and I ended up close to close to suicide again a couple of weeks after, because I'd reached out to everybody I possibly could, and I got nowhere. I don't want other people to feel like there's no option. No, there is an option. There's always an option. Reach out, drop me a message. Someone there, they feel better. Like, just reach out to anybody, and there's definitely ways of getting help, even if it's not through the actual official channels.
Yeah, I think what we talked about earlier around, you gain so much strength in sharing, and it might not even be that the other person says or does anything in particular to really help, but sometimes saying it out loud, you take control of how you feel. Where when it's in your own head, you're constantly fighting. You're almost trying to suppress the thoughts, but actually by speaking it aloud, it almost becomes real, and then it's tangible, and then you can rationally think about what it is you've said, and then you can maybe start to problem solve, solutionize, positive thoughts around it, and overcome it. That was definitely my process, and it definitely helped me a lot. Neil, there's definitely a question for you within this. So within your work and what you do, if someone was athlete, non-athlete, civvy, whatever, if someone's struggling, what advice would you give them? Like, what should they do? And again, I'm not going to say that you are obviously the gold-plated expert and your word's gospel and that's it. Because again, I know no one ever wants to be that person to say everyone should do this, because everyone's an individual. We all have our own sort of things that work best for us. But from your experience and the work you do, what do you think people should do?
I think what Reece was saying, I mean, it's reach out to people. It's taking a moment, like you just said as well, Lewis, to understand. And this is where it's really difficult, actually, because this goes back to my point earlier about when you're in a good place, you feel you're in a good place, start putting connections in place, that support network, start thinking about, when I'm not in a good place, what am I going to do? Because when you're not in a good place, sometimes it's hard to be rational, isn't it? You're not thinking rationally when you're so far down there. So really, for people listening today, really think and reflect on what we've been talking about, and what can I do now to start protecting my well-being. So when that challenge comes along, I'm in a better place. I mean, if you are struggling now and you're like we say, you're reaching out and you're not getting anything back, then maybe it is as simple as going on to social media and reaching out to people like you two, for example. I'm sure if anybody sent you a message via the podcast, via LinkedIn, via Instagram, whatever, and said, "Oh yeah, I'm not feeling good," boom, your reply. I would reply. So anybody listening, what me I know on LinkedIn, Neil Clark Loughborough, you'll find me. And there's loads of Neil's, Reece, Lewis's. There's loads of us who care about people. And so if you're not getting the help, just you find someone in the space. And I know loads of people at lots of charities, whether it's Go Again, Sport and Wellness, Switch to Play, If You Care Share, who are up in the Northeast, passionate people who respond as soon as they could if they knew you were struggling. So it's just reach out, just send that note, just send it to friend, family, or even a stranger. Even on the tube, or or whatever, or a parent at the school drop off, just say, "Oh, do you know what? I'm not feeling good, feeling low." I believe that humans by default are good people. We want to be good. We want to. We belong in a tribe. Our default is looking after each other. That's how we thrive. Now, life gets in the way and makes us behave in a way that doesn't look like that. But I do think if you talk to people, 99.9% of people will say, "But what, coffee now," or hit WhatsApp, or whatever. Just go for a walk, or "I'm here." Just that powerful. "I'm here. What do you need?" That's what I would say. And I know it's not always easy.
Yeah, I think when the charities as well that you were just mentioning there, like when no one pointed that out, no doctors, no one I reached out to, not one of them mentioned the charity. And because I was in such a rut with myself, I didn't think to research it. And I do a lot of fundraising for If You Care Share now and I'm doing an event next month, which is going to be raising money for them as well. It's going to be my first public speaking sort of event. I'm nervous as hell for it, but it's like I didn't realize that there was those sort of things that I could reach out to. Rang the doctors. I rang the numbers they told us to ring. The crisis team were involved, and every one of them just shut us down and said, just try this. And it was just, if you can speak to somebody that's in a better state of mind, you reach out to that person, then they can be the ones that go like think rationally enough to be like, right, well, there's this place that can help you. Because when you're sort of in that mindset, you're not going to be thinking clearly enough to sort of think outside the box with different ways you can go about it. You're just going to listen to the people that you call, because actually ringing the doctors, ringing the people they're telling you to is hard enough. And that's a big step that you're taking to then be shut down. It's tough. And I know, like, I didn't want to keep ringing people because I didn't want to keep getting shut down. And I shut the door on myself because I didn't want someone else to keep doing it for us, because it was actually very, very, what's the word?
I can imagine it's demoralizing.
Yeah.
It would ruin that little bit of, because you push yourself out your comfort zone to even speak up. We don't naturally do it.
Yeah.
So when you do it, you almost need people to meet you probably more than halfway. It feels like because you're maybe not at halfway, because you're, again, as a man, me personally, I had never spoken up about how I felt for 29 years. So it got to 29 just before my 30th birthday, and effectively had a breakdown and was like, shit, I can't handle this. And life got on top of me, and it was years and years and years of suppressing it. Luckily, when I opened up, people stepped up, but they probably stepped up more than I opened up. But without that, hearing your story, Reese, I can imagine I probably would have went back the other way and withdrawn myself a little bit more, because you almost feel like if you're making yourself vulnerable, you need people to be really, I don't know what the word is, really emotional back, but in like a caring, supportive way.
It's that whole hashtag it's okay to talk and things like that as well. And it's the message is speak up if you're struggling. But then I spoke up when I was struggling and I got nowhere. So it's kind of like, why did I speak up? I've made myself worse from speaking up. And it like I say, it actually did make me worse. There was a point a few weeks after my suicide attempt where I was parked up in a car park next to a pub, next to a garage where I could get vodka or any sort of spirit. And I was contemplating drinking, because then I knew if I was sober, I couldn't do it because of the hurt that it would cause other people. But because of what alcohol did to me and how selfish it made me, I knew that I wouldn't care about that at that time. It's a mad feeling. It's a mad situation. I think it's a hard time to be around at the minute, because of all the services seem to be quite battered, especially the NHS ones. So
they're probably underfunded at the moment and things, which is making it tough.
So, but I think the main message is reach out to somebody. There's always somebody that can help you, and then they can be the one to point you in directions. And you've always got places like Samaritans and that you can call if you're in a time of need and you can't get through to someone that you would want to speak to.
I think that's a really good. And it shows, just flipping it on its head, for those of us we're in a good place, we're feeling a good place, we need to be proactive and making sure our friends are. And I always think about it on say you take WhatsApp, for example, and WhatsApp can be used for good, and you have all these groups, and if you've got friends who are active on a WhatsApp group and they go quiet, don't just think, oh, they're a bit moody or a bit quiet, whatever. Just try and be a bit proactive and say, hey, are you okay? Not heard from you for a while. What's going on? Or are you okay? No, how are you feeling? What's going on?
That's it. Open question.
Well, though, an open question, because how many times? How? Okay, but no. How are you feeling? What's going on?
Yeah. 100%.
So we can practice that as well. But I hear what you're saying, Reece. and we talk about this in our charities as well, and we offer like emotional help. And we've talked about this, that what if we offer a service, if somebody opens, puts a hand up and needs help, we've got to have something in place to support them until until they're in a better place. And so we're doing partnerships with other charities, and that's one of the things I want to go. And I was talking to an organisation called Go Again recently, Bob there, who's brilliant, about how can we bring all the charities together, because there's so many charities doing similar things but
so many
different.
amazing work. Yeah,
and I wonder if we could just all come together and not compete for the same parts of the pie, but make the pie bigger and use it like economies of scale and have a network across the UK. And if I can't help with this hat on, I know Bob down the road at Go Again can, or Matt at If You Care Share, or Sport and Wellness. And leave our ego, and look, there's no egos, but if there are, leave them at the door and just work together. And that's one of my long-term goals is to bring, and you guys as well. And then we can, it could be more than just charities. It could be podcasts. It could be wellbeing consultants.
But it probably has to be. It probably has to be to cut through. So, because when Reese was saying he didn't know where to turn, I didn't have a clue either. I'm being honest. I did not have a clue what to do, because the charities are generally underfunded. They are generally, most of them, unless they are the big ones, they're very small staffed. Having a marketing team and spending loads of money on ads, because I work in marketing, to get seen properly costs an absolute fortune. They don't have the money to spend to be seen properly. So the services very much rely on doing a really, really good job and word of mouth. Like generally, that's where most of these small charities get referrals from. There might be in some doctor surgeries, they might have some leaflets there. But just relying solely on the NHS becomes way harder, I think. And I think the idea of having a real framework across the UK of a true support network, because most people who work for charities as well, or have the desire to go and set up a charity, have probably gone through something similar themselves, or been affected by something similar, because that's their core purpose in life, to support that cause. Where necessarily, and I'm not here to slate the NHS by any stretch, the NHS are trying to be one size fits all, do everything, and you don't necessarily get that true love, care, and attention that you really need to support you as an individual, because you're following a set process versus tailoring it to your sort of needs. I do have a question, Neil. I have a number of questions, actually. So first would be, in the elite world, and obviously you spend some time in the elite world with elite athletes, how are they with speaking up? And I know you said before that it's starting to get better, probably with the introduction of things like sports psychologists and stuff. But what is the culture generally around elite sport and people speaking about their mental health?
I think it's challenging. I think because you've got this tension that if you have coaches who have a mindset about mental health or a stigma towards it, then for the athlete it's harder for them to speak up. If the athlete feels that it can be seen as a sign of weakness, then maybe they're not going to be selected for the team, for the Olympics, for their sport. It's really difficult. And one of the lectures I do at Loughborough University, London, is around a concept called psychological safety, and it's been big in the sort of business world for years. It's getting more traction now. We've only started doing research. My supervisor, Professor David Fletcher at Loughborough, has done some research on this. In the sports world, it's only happened the last few years. And I did some work at a rugby club not so long ago on this. I think when it comes to mental health and well-being, we've got to look at the whole ecosystem. We do lots of work at the athletes, but we've got to look at all the other significant adults, the parents, the host families, the coaches, who's caring for the carers. Look at the whole system and create an environment where, like I said, right at the start of the podcast, it's seen as a strength to say, I'm feeling a bit anxious or overwhelmed. I need to speak to someone. It's not seen as a weakness. But going back to your question, I think it's difficult. I think it's even like being in the workplace. And like we said earlier, would you ring up work and say, I need a day off, I'm not well? Or what's wrong? Have you got a headache or a bad stuff? Or no, I'm feeling quite overwhelmed at the moment. I'm feeling quite anxious. I need time out. Would I have ever done that in my old career? Unlikely. Maybe with one of my old bosses, yes. With some of the other bosses, no. Would people do it now? It's really situational. It depends on how long you've been there, how close you are to your co-workers. I do work with teachers, and one of the challenges they have is if they phone in, and if they don't go in, you can't, the class aren't sitting there doing nothing. Somebody else has to take up their work. So there's a guilt that if they step back to take time out to look after themselves, they feel guilty because they're increasing the workload for their co-workers, which might be slightly different from an IT guy who just doesn't go in, they would catch up another time. So I think it's hard in the sports world. I do, and it's going to be a long time, I think, until we're really in a place where athletes feel comfortable saying exactly how they feel around their mental health and well-being.
Yeah, I think you're right there as well. I think there's so many challenges, and where you said around being selected.
There are some exceptions now. Now I'm thinking about it, where you have the likes of Simone Biles in gymnastics, who said, "I need time out."
Yeah.
With cycling and tennis, wasn't treated very well by the French Open. I'll get in trouble for this, but when she went to the Olympics, they looked after her. So again, where there's psychological safety, where there's a right environment, and the people, who really care, and I think about the big picture, and I think about the athlete. Some of the athletes are now standing up and saying that they feel brave enough and are willing to be vulnerable. I feel that they're the exceptions.
There's probably another question, and it's really specific, but I love football, so I have to probably ask it. So the idea of, obviously penalty shootout, you've got that mental pressure, World Cup semi-final, final, whatever, quarterfinals. Is there things that people can be doing to strengthen their their ability to cope with pressure and pressure environments? Is there anything that people could do? So if you think, I'll probably add some more context so it's clear for the listeners. So heightened situation, I'm using a penalty shootout because we all know what that is, but it could be a presentation at work. Similar, you get in your own mindset, you maybe overthink it, because every professional footballer who takes a penalty and misses is way capable of scoring that penalty. The reason they miss is because mentality. It's not skill, it's not ability, it's mentality. And are there things that people can do generally to get out of their own head? I
think there are. Something I read that I thought was really interesting, and here's a tip for Reese, because you're going to do your public speaking, is that the feelings of being nervous and excited, the physical feelings are actually not the same. The stomach, the sweating, all that sort of stuff. So one thing, it's all about reframing the conversation in your head. And every time I go into a workshop or a new situation, I say to myself, I'm not nervous, I'm excited. That's why I'm feeling this way. And it's really interesting that way, and just by reframing the way, that inner voice from the negative to the positive, from like I say, nervous to excitement, is really powerful. So in the world of my workshops in Mental Health UK, we talk about the inner critic and the inner coach. And the inner critic saying, I can't do this, I'm going to fail, I'm no good at this. And we need to recognise that, acknowledge what we're saying to ourselves, label it, but then say, okay, what would our inner coach say? Well, I'm not quite there yet. I haven't prepared enough. The power of the word "yet," I love using that. I can't play the piano. No, I can't play the piano yet. Because that implies that you can do it in the future. It's just that you haven't had the right coaching. I haven't got someone showing me. I haven't downloaded some podcasts how to learn the piano. So I think to deal with pressure, it's reframing how you're talking to yourself is one way to do it. Okay.
Honestly, I think that was massive. I think the hard thing for me would be in that moment remembering to do that. It's almost making that a skill, isn't it? Like, again, like everything, every thought is a skill in how you train your brain.
Definitely on that point again. So we talk about neuroplasticity and building these pathways. And I say to all the young people I work with that, if you keep making lots of positive choices and creating these habits, it's hard at first, but it gets easier and easier. And I use an example. I mentioned my wife now, and her friend years ago said to me about when you're in that big town hall or conference meeting, there's hundreds of people, and the CEO's done a big speech, and he says, "Any questions?" and there's tumbleweed, and everybody's sitting there on their hands and sweating. And you think, no, I want to ask a question. Now, the first time you put your hand up, you're a bit sweaty, you're a bit nervous, and you ask, ask a relevant question. And you ask it, nothing bad happens, and then they move on. The second time you're in that situation, it feels just a little bit easier. Then the third time, and the fourth time. So I always say to people in my workshops, when I ask for volunteers to come up and I have these giant Post-it notes, to write on a giant Post-it note, I say, use this opportunity. We're in a safe environment. Nothing's going to happen to you, because the more you volunteer, the easier it becomes. So again, to your point, creating those good habits of talking to yourself in a positive way, of saying to yourself, Reese, I'm not nervous, I'm excited. It's really powerful.
I like that a lot. Yeah, thank you.
So there was one thing you touched on there, actually, and I wasn't going to go there, but I do think it's probably quite a good one. You touched on your inner critic, your inner coach. Is that theory fairly similar to like the chimp paradox of like your chimp gives you that negative thought? Is that a similar sort of process?
Yeah, I met him once, twice. It's not.
That is definitely a great name drop, by the way.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, he's a great guy. It's not too dissimilar. I read the chimp paradox a long time ago. It's it's all about what I think is really powerful as well, is understanding how the brain works, and understanding that like I just said, you can rewire your brain. It's not fixed. And there's a lovely video we use in Mental Health UK showing the bad habit disappearing as a new habit appears. And so understanding the amygdala, the emotional part of your brain, reacting. When does it react that way? Is it because I'm tired? I haven't eaten properly. I haven't done my exercise. So back to controlling sleep, diet, exercise. So recognizing when you're at your best and when you're not at your best. And I'm guilty of that. I might think, I know I have all the answers. My wife will tell you I'm not at my best all the time.
They're brilliant at that. They are brilliant at that.
You'll probably appear in the kitchen in a minute. And I need to recognize why was that? Is it because I'm nervous that I'm behind in my work? So I'm feeling that anxious. Is it because I haven't eaten properly? So there is the inner critic, inner coach is not too similar to the chimp straight away saying this. You need to stop, move to the thinking brain. Is it the computer in the chimp paradox model? I think
the computer brain is
give you an answer or give you a response, but that response sometimes I think with that computer might not be ideal, and then you have to reprogram, don't you?
It's essentially the monkey's your emotional anger, fear, stress, like it's the emotional part, and it's learning how to control the emotion to think with maybe more clarity, and you almost set those really good habits of doing the right things continuously, and over time you put your chimp in a box. I think generally I haven't read it for a couple of years.
I always say you never suppress a chimp and batter it down with the nearest thing. That's your negative emotions. I never say ignore your negative emotions. Yeah. But acknowledge them, label them. And you said it earlier, Lewis, about going from there and talking it out loud makes it tangible. Okay, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Okay, I've acknowledged that. I've made it a real thing, so I can do something about it now. So why am I overwhelmed? Do I need to get some help? Do I need to take a break? Do I need to take my PhD? It's the biggest thing in the world, and it can feel overwhelming at times. But if I just say to Alexa, and I whisper in case she goes off, 30-minute timer, 30 minutes. After that 30 minutes, I always feel a little bit better. I've always made progress. I celebrate that success, and I've moved closer to achieving that massive goal. So breaking it down into small chunks.
No, I love that. I do have one more question. Sorry, Reese. And then Reese, feel free to ask, because this last one would be, this is one that's been helping me with running. So whether I'm stressed, you guys might feel this as well, actually, stressed or whatever, I almost use that stress energy as a way when it's getting tough, and it almost allows me to like power through the pain a little bit. I'm like, work's on top of me, or life isn't what I want it to be, or whatever that might be. Not really using real examples there. And I use that like almost pent up energy that I've got to run through. So has there been times in probably either your life, for both of you here, where you've been I don't know, doing something really challenging. Mine would be a run because it's fairly recent. And you've used those types of maybe negative emotions into a positive. And how's that worked for you if you have?
Mm. Do you want to go first, Reece? Or do I go first? What do you want?
Yeah, no, you can go for it.
I was thinking one actually. I won't mention his name. I was at a wedding once, and I wasn't drinking because I had a triathlon the next day, and someone kept saying, "Have a drink." I'm saying no, and after about the fifth no, it was getting a bit annoying. And I used that the next day actually to power me through the triathlon to say, look, I made a choice because it was important for me to do this triathlon. I've got a goal to do well, and I kind of used that to drive me forward. That kind of annoyance that someone couldn't quite accept the decision I made. I thought, to power me on. So maybe that's kind of one example.
Yeah. Reece, do you have that much or not?
Yeah, I do. It definitely helps with my running. And I've been trying to get a sub 25k for about, I don't know, most this year, pretty much. And I could
you mean 20,
get about
20-minute 5k?
Under 20-minute 5k, yeah. What did I say?
I thought you said 25-minute 5k.
Oh, maybe under 20 minutes for a 5k. And I just couldn't get really under 20 minutes 27. And then I did Jared 10k a few weeks ago, and the first 5k I just went for it, and I'd done 19 minutes 34 or something, and I finished in 41:49. So I'd set a PR on the 5 and 10k. Next day I was still buzzing, and one of the lads from the running club rings us, Ian, and he went, "You do realize that doesn't count as your 5k time?" I went, "What do you mean?" I said, it's still 5k. It's like straw. It counts. I've accepted that badge. And he went, no, it's not a 5k race. So he went, "There's a 5k tomorrow night at the club. You're gonna have to come there and do it again." I'm thinking, I've just done a 10k. My legs are gonna be heavy. It's not the nicest course. It's really open as well, so the wind and everything, it really gets you. So I was thinking, I was just doing loads of excuses, and then I just went for it, and I ended up doing 19 minutes 26. So I'd knocked even time off from the Sunday as well. And he was in front of us because it's a like handicap race. So I started about a minute after, and I was like, I'm gonna catch him. But he ended up running quite a good time. I never caught him, but I still beat his time. So I was happy overall. And yes, he knew what he was doing. He rang us with the intention of getting us there on that Tuesday to go and beat the 19 out of the 20 minutes. So he done it in a triggering way, but he knew what he was doing to actually help us out. So it's a positive, negative, positive. Yeah.
No, that's brilliant. I think the reason why I asked that, because I've only just realized it, I think 3 days ago, that I was able to use what was probably negative thoughts in a way really constructive. And it's just a lesson. I haven't, as you can probably tell, it wasn't the greatest question in the world in terms of the way I framed it. It's quite a new emotion for me that I'm probably still processing. But it was as much interest in thinking, have I either cracked the code and no one else has done it, or you guys have done it too? So it makes sense. No, that's
I think it's a really good question, actually, because I could think of another example where, again, in triathlon, it seems to be all about triathlons now and 5Ks, where a young guy who had beaten me in a race before, at the start of the triathlon, start the swim, walked past me, tapped me on my butt, and said, I'll say hello. I'll say hello as I pass you on the run. And I was like, you are kidding me. And I flew on the swim, flew on the bike. He had beaten me by about 2 minutes a month earlier. It was a photo finish because I drove me forward. But back to your question, I suppose the point there is sometimes it's okay to use the negative emotion. So we talked about reframing it to the positive. We talked about acknowledging. But if something's annoyed you, could you use it in a positive way to drive you forward? Yeah,
it almost gave me adrenaline. That was the thing. Like, there's a stretch on my run, and I don't run quite as fast as Reece yet. I'm using your yet there because I will be, because I know I'm a better athlete than him. So I was waiting for a bite there. There's a part of my run where I know I can go really fast, and mentally, once I get there, it's literally as I get down to the coast, and it's a really flat bit, and every single time I do it faster and faster and faster, and it's like I can get sub 4 minutes and along that stretch, 4 minute a K,
For a
I'm
mile?
absolutely fine.
Ah,
No, not a mile. No, Reese, I
gonna
don't run in
say.
mile like you. Remember? No, not per mile. I run in Ks.
just
I-
broke
I-
just broke the world record for a mile.
Yeah, no, definitely Ks, not miles. I can't even comprehend actually people running a mile in under 4 minutes. Like, because running a K under 4 minutes is quite hard. So running a mile, yeah, can't really comprehend that. But I get to that point, and it's almost like I get there, the air's fresh, I can feel this sort of the sea breeze, and there's times because by then I'm like 12-ish minutes into my run. And that's when, like, probably what Reese was saying, you get into your own head, you're processing your thoughts. That's what I use my runs for. And at that point, I'm probably halfway through a problem or thinking about something. And that's when, like, it just gives me that adrenaline and that boost to go, okay, shit, you can sprint. But then I get to a hill and you inevitably slow down a bit, right? Because you can't sprint. I can't sprint up hills, 4K or whatever. But yeah, again, just interesting to understand sort of your points on that. Reese, did you have questions? And I know I interrupted you before. It's okay if you didn't.
I can't remember. There was something, but I can't remember what point one. I can't. Sorry, no.
It's okay.
It's gone.
It's okay.
I forgot to write it down.
It's all right. Neil, we are obviously coming to the end. We said we'd do about an hour and a half, and we're about an hour 40 here. So obviously super grateful for your time giving us. Giving you your time and insight tonight. There is one question that we ask every single guest. Normally it's Ethan who's on the podcast, who wasn't able to make it tonight. It's called Hear No Evil, See No Evil. It's the section of a pod that we do. So is there a book or a podcast that has helped you through either a difficult time or what you found really, it's almost helped shape your life and your way of thinking that would be beneficial for our listeners to read or listen to?
Yeah, there's so many.
I can imagine.
The one that comes to my mind is the High Performance Podcast by Jake Humphrey.
By Jake, yeah.
And I made this point the other day at a dinner party. They have guests on there that are obviously the high performers, and then they have someone like Ryland, the TV personality, or the recent one, Delia Smith. And my bias comes out. Would I learn much? It's not Sir Clive Woodward or whatever. I thought, no, put your biases to one side, come out your echo chamber. And they are amazing. The one with Delia. And what I do when I do my long run, that's when it goes on. So it's like I'm kind of working, enjoying and running. The one with Delia Smith was amazing. What she spoke about, you just have to listen to it. It's not the chef coming on the Norwich pitch saying, come and have it. It's someone talking really deeply about human connection, the power of community and citizenship. And it was mind-blowing. And there was one with David Smith recently. There's all of them are insightful. The one with Tyson Fury was brilliant.
Yeah, Tyson Fury was good.
Yeah,
Johnny Wilkinson was my favourite pod for him, actually. I have the Johnny Wilkinson one.
Yeah, I don't think do you know, it might be the one I've not listened to actually, but I've listened to most of them. And like I say, it's a case of, like I say, Ryan, TV personality, why sport high performance, and just the way he was open about his life and the challenges he had and how he dealt with them around well-being. There's so much to learn. You could pick up 3 or 4 golden nuggets of advice in every single one of those podcasts.
They've got Gordon Ramsay on today.
I saw that. I'm going to listen to that this weekend when I go on the long run. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, I'm interested in that one. Yeah, I'll go on Sunday if I don't get out and I'm on the treadmill.
Cool.
Yeah, big
I've got
fan
a book
of
for you actually that you like.
It's
called Can't Swim, Can't Bike, Can't Run. Can't swim, can't ride, can't run. It's an Ironman story. How a bloke just had never done anything before, and Andy Holgate it's by. It's brilliant. Okay. I don't know if you've heard of it. You'll enjoy it since you like it.
Rings a bell. Sounds good.
Yeah, you'll enjoy it.
Thank you.
And what does he talk about on it? Just the struggles of doing an Ironman.
So it's just a guy who'd never ran before. He'd done a bit of cycling to work, but he didn't do any swimming or hardly anything. So he set himself a task of signing up for I think it was a sprint triathlon at first, and then next thing you know, he's doing Ironman. So something like yourself, really. But it's a really interesting read, and it's a great book, actually. Really, really good book. I listened to it on Audible. because I struggle to read for longer than 10 minutes. But yeah, it's really, really good. I enjoyed it a lot.
I will definitely give that a read as well. 100%.
Yeah.
So Neil, yeah, that brings us to the end of the podcast. And honestly, thank you so much for coming on. Super insightful. As I said, I learned so much, and I'm looking forward to, again, seeing more of your posts and more of the work that you do. And I know we discussed earlier around potential, like in the future for us as a podcast, we would like to get other guests on with other guests, and maybe we talk about various topics, debate various things and stuff. So we would obviously love to have you back on in the future. And yeah, super grateful for you coming on.
It's been brilliant. So, like I said, when you first contacted me, I'm honoured to be invited. I've learned today as well from you guys. And yeah, let's keep talking and keep spreading the good word and telling people, like we said earlier, if you're struggling, reach out. It could be us, it could be anyone. But please reach out and talk to someone. Yeah,
honestly, really appreciate it. And thanks to listeners. This is a live that we never really get the big listeners on the live. So again, if you're listening, you can follow us on Spotify, where our biggest audience is. I think we're averaging about 10,000 listeners on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever. But Spotify is our biggest listener. So thank you very much to everyone for listening, and we will catch you on the next one. Good night.
Brilliant. Take care.